Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the pulse of Rescue Nation, brought to you by XCancer. Check them out at XCancer.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Nebraska defense has played significantly better the last two games since the bye week. And I want to give my top five. If you agree with me, smash that like button. Destroy that like button. Dominate that like button. If you agree with me that the defense has played better. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to give my top 5 reasons, okay, why I believe that they have played noticeably, significantly better. But before I do that, I want to compare stats from our first 3 FBS opponents before the bye week to our last 2 opponents. And no disrespect to North Dakota, okay, but I want to compare FBS opponents to FBS opponents. So I'm going to talk about our 3 FBS opponents and those stats compared before the bye week to our last 2 opponents, our Big Ten opponents since the bye week. So just know that as I'm going through these stats. All due respect to FCS teams, they're phenomenal. Love them, okay? And North Dakota is a pretty decent FCS team. I just don't agree with FBS teams playing FCS teams. That's just my personal opinion. So let's move forward. And I want to go through some stats here first, because here's what I love about stats, okay? They're undeniable. You can't argue with them. They're facts, okay? They don't care about your opinion, your feelings, okay? That's what I love about facts. Facts don't care about feelings. So I want to rifle through some of these stats and then give my thoughts as to why I believe they are playing quite a bit better these last couple of games. All right, now, since Bill Busch took over the defense following Nebraska's bye week, they're top 15 for total defensive stats. Now, our first 3 FBS opponents, we were given the Northwestern, and these were not exactly juggernauts. I mean, Rutgers and Indiana, don't get me wrong. They're probably the least 2 effective and least 2 talented offenses we're going to face the rest of the season since our bye week. Well, except for maybe Iowa. Oh, my gosh. I digress with that. It's interesting, though. I'm just going to go there for a quick second. All right, and I've always referred to Brian Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz, the head coach's son. He's the offensive coordinator. I've always referred to him as Baby Ferentz. Just kind of having fun, poking the bear a little bit, so to speak. I don't think I've ever in my life thought I would see daddy ball at a major collegiate level of competition, which is what the Big Ten Conference is. It doesn't get much higher. So I never thought I would see daddy ball, but that's their problem. I digress. Let's get back to Nebraska where it really matters. All right, our first 3 FBS opponents before the bye week were Northwestern. By the way, not exactly juggernauts. Northwestern's 1-5, Georgia Southern 3-3, Oklahoma 3-3. They have a combined record of 7 wins, 11 losses. So when we're comparing stats from Rutgers and Indiana to those 3 opponents, it's not as drastically different when we're talking about the competition that we've faced so far, which is not a single team with a winning record. It's not as different as you might think. I do think it gets tougher down the stretch, and we'll see how this defense performs going forward, starting with Purdue. But I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, versus our first 3 FBS opponents, we gave up an average of 42 points per game. Okay? Now, since the bye week, we're giving up an average of 17 points per game. That is an improvement of 60%. We're giving up 60% less points per game than we were. All right, total yards. Those first 3 FBS opponents, we gave up an average of 583 total yards per game. Our last couple of games versus Rutgers and Indiana, we're giving up an average of 319 total yards per game. That's an improvement or a drop in amount of yardage, total yards that we're giving up of 45%. That's a huge improvement from our defensive perspective. Now, this next stat stunned me. It stunned me. We were giving up an average before the bye week of 261 rushing yards per game. When I did that math and I saw that, I was like, what are we playing, Air Force every week? I was stunned. Okay, since the bye week, we're giving up an average of 91 rushing yards per game. Every defense that I've ever played on, all the way back to high school, our unwritten goal was always to hold our opponent under 100 yards rushing. Okay, that is an improvement of 65% when it comes to the amount of rushing yards that we're not giving up. We went from giving up over 250 rush yards a game to under 100. That's quite an improvement. All right, and just to put a final button on our first 3 FBS opponents, they have a combined winning percentage of 36% at this point in time. Okay, again, we have not had a tough schedule to this point so far. And again, Indiana, Rutgers, not exactly Georgia, Alabama. I get it. We're going to face better competition down the road. All I can talk about is what we've faced so far and compare pre and post bye week. And then we will see. Because I expect the defense to play better, but how well can they keep this level of play up? Can they make the proper adjustments versus more good coaches versus teams with more talent, better offenses? How they're going to perform going forward. But we don't beat Rutgers if this defense doesn't play the way it did. This defense has played a lot better. Okay, and again, I love stats. So let's round out some of these stats if I can find my place. Another thing that stuck out to me, the second half. Okay, our last 2 games, we've outscored our opponents 28-0 in those 2 second halves combined. We've outscored them 21-0 in the fourth quarter, those 2 fourth quarters combined. All right, I think I lost my spot. Oh, the first 3 games, we were outscored in every single second half. Well, I guess we tied with Northwestern, the amount of points that were scored, them and us in the second half, and Northwestern's a whopping 1-5. We are the one win, unfortunately, but obviously we are getting better. And like again, Rutgers, Indiana, they're going through trials and tribulations of their own. Rutgers just fired their offensive line coach or running game coordinator. Indiana just fired their offensive coordinator. Okay, but I'm just impressed by some of these second half adjustments that I've seen in the last 2 games. Okay, so far we've given up 0 points in the second half versus Indiana and 0 in the second half versus Rutgers. We've given up an average of 0 points in the last 2 games in the second half. We've given up an average of 65.5 total yards in the second half of the last 2 games, or just over 30 yards a quarter, or combined in the last 4 quarters of the 2 second halves combined versus Indiana and Rutgers, a combined 131 yards of total offense we've allowed. That's pretty good. And we have forced 4 total interceptions. So if you want to do an average per game, that's 2 interceptions on average in each of the last 2 second halves. All right. Final stat, because this one's very important. We have had such a hard time getting pressure on quarterbacks here at Nebraska for years. I harp on it every offseason. Got to find a pass rusher. Got to get it done. All right, our first 3 FBS opponents this year, before the bye week, we had a total of 2 sacks and a total of 10 tackles for loss. Since the bye week, we've had a total of 6 sacks, okay, and 13 total tackles for loss. So 3 times as many sacks and 1 less total ball games pre and post bye week. Okay. And I've already talked about all this, Rutgers, Indiana, can we keep it going? All my notes, I've already nailed it all. So here's the deal. Here's my final thoughts. We will find out how well this defense can play down the stretch. They have improved a lot. How can they do against better offenses, continued good coaches, a little bit more athletic teams, okay? And we're going to find out initially versus Purdue. Purdue is a team that they beat Minnesota, who looked like the best team in the Big Ten West at the time. They beat them in Minnesota. Okay, even their loss, Purdue's loss, is to Penn State, undefeated top 10 team, and they just about beat them. So they look at the moment, a lot of football left to be played, like the team to beat in the Big Ten West. That's who we play Saturday. This is a team that averages over 300 passing yards a game, which is 3rd in the Big Ten. They average 33 points per game, and they opened as a 13.5-point favorite. Last time I looked, we're now an 11.5-point underdog to them. So here are my top 5 reasons why I believe Nebraska's defense is playing better since the bye week. Number 1, they're getting lined up. It's this crazy concept where you would see them kind of running around, confused, trying to get lined up, then the ball snapped. Well, it's hard to play fast. It's hard to be physical. It's hard to do anything right if you're not lined up. As simple and basic as it sounds, they're getting lined up, which allows you to recognize formations, allows you to recognize motions and tendencies and play fast and be physical just by being in the right spot to begin with. All right, they're playing faster. They're plain and simply playing faster. Other than the first half of Rutgers, they played fast for 4 quarters versus Indiana. And to their credit, they played fast in the second half versus Rutgers. And they really only gave up 10 total points defensively versus Rutgers. All right, that block punt gave Rutgers great field position. They held them to a field goal. That really wasn't their fault. All right, so they're lining up better. They're playing fast. They're doing it for 4 full quarters of being gap sound. Hey, crazy concept. When you're lined up properly and you're playing fast, you have a much better opportunity to be in your gap on the opponent's run plays. And shockingly, all of a sudden, we're not giving up as many rush yards. The tackling has improved. It's still a work in progress. It's a work in progress, but it has improved. Also, we're getting more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. I believe this is due to scheme. The scheme is finally more aggressive, and the players are playing more aggressive. All right, let me know in the comments below. Who's your defensive MVP for Nebraska the past 2 games? And will Nebraska's defense continue to play at a high level the rest of the season? Until next time, go Big Red, and always remember, throw the ball. This show is brought to you by XCancer. Join the fight at XCancerStore.com and support your loved ones, your neighbors, and cancer fighters all over the world and help them gain access to revolutionary treatments. XCancerStore.com has a wide variety of t-shirts and merchandise supporting a wide variety of cancer battles so you can show off the colors that matter. Proceeds from each purchase not only help those at home, but also cancer fighters in Tanzania, Africa. Check them out at XCancerStore.com.